Wilson and Jay Gallatin, both of them serve as associate pastors, and I've asked them to kind of give their perspective on the role in which they serve. I'm hoping as lead pastors too, we hear their hearts, and as lead pastors, you can begin incorporating some of these things that they bring out into your own heart and ministry. So let's just open up our lives, let the Lord speak to us, and we're going to have a great time together.
Well, hey, thanks so much for being here, and we're excited to spend some time with you. At the end, we're going to open it up for Q&A, so if you have some questions, write them down. We'll jump into them and get those toward the end of our opportunity with you. So really, what we want to talk about today is not only how to lead, maybe you're a lead pastor, but how do you lead the teams that you're on? How do you lead? For some of you, that might be upward. For some of you, that might be downward. We want to talk all those things. But I'd like to introduce Pastor Jay. Pastor Jay has served as the executive and equipping pastor at New Life Church in Polson. He's been on staff there for 10 years, but he has been in lay ministry for over 40. And so he brings this great, steady perspective to ministry, and excited to tag team with him here. Jay and his wife, Carrie, have been married for 42 years, and they have a great family that continues to grow. They have 5 kids of their own, and let me make sure I get this right. They have 1 son-in-law, 3 daughters-in-law, and most importantly, 5 grandkids. And Jay let me know that is a season that I need to look forward to at some point in my life. But outside of church, if you're looking for Jay, you'll find him on Flathead Lake, or you will find him in his backyard smoking and grilling. And when I say smoking, you know what I'm talking about. So, but that's Jay in a nutshell, and super excited to have Jay here.
Yeah. It's a privilege this morning to be here with Phil, and Phil has been on staff at Canvas Church for over 13 years. He has 29 years of experience over 3 different churches that he's worked with, and he's just a natural connector of people. And he just loves to see people grow and lead with influence, intention, and just be an encourager. And he's been a great encourager to me as we've been working on this session together. He's married to Janelle, and they've been married for 27 years. And they have 3 of their own kids and 1 son-in-law. And your daughter just got married. Just got married. So they just love building relationships with everybody. And he is a big hoops guy. He loves to get out in the gym and run and play with a bunch of his friends. So you'll see him at the local gyms. He's also a car guy, so he'll be cruising the Glacier Street with the Glacier Street Rodders. And I don't know if you've ever been on Kalispell, but man, I've been up there on Friday nights, and that Main Street is just going crazy. I think you do something a little bit different than that, but you like to do that too. And then he loves coffee. So if you want to get to know Phil, we were talking about building relationships in the lobby. Get a cup of coffee, sit down, and you'll have a great time with Phil.
Well, hey, as we dive in here, just want to talk through, like, what does this look like? And for some of us, it's leadership. For some of it's followership. It's setting expectations with the calling that God's put on our life and really aligning with the leadership that God has put around us. And I think one of these things as we move through, we look at where do our conversations take place? How do we have communication channels with those that are around us? And I think this would be great to know too. From a leadership context, some of the tools we're giving you also work in a family context. Because I think most of us understand if we don't have good communication in our family, there's breakdowns. So now take it to the leadership context we find ourselves in. If we don't have communication in those settings, there are also breakdowns. And breakdowns, as we know, they're not fun, they're not good, and they can be challenging at times. So we want to push through and talk today through some of these to prevent us from some of these breakdowns. One of the things I also want to talk about is for some of you, you might look at this and go, well, I don't really have a staff or a team that I'm leading. And I would like for you to really flip the idea of that to you have people you lead. You're a leader. You're in this room for a reason. For some of you, your leadership team is your board. For some of you, you need to look through the lens of how do I lead Pastor Dave as our superintendent? How do I communicate with him so I'm setting him up for success when someone asks about what's going on in the ministry I lead? And an easy way, one of the ways I do that is as a presbyter, when I send something out to all the pastors and missionaries and leaders in our section, he's a part of that communication, so he never has to question some of the things that I may be doing as a leader. I'm setting him up so he knows what's happening. And so we'll dive through that lens as well. And so that's kind of where we're headed. And Jay, you take it away.
One of the things that we really want to share today is just some of our own life experiences and what God has just kind of shown us over time. And I think we're all students, right? We're all students of learning what God wants to show us. And so some of these things have been that we've put into practice in our family life. We finally have caught some language maybe that we can put to it. And if you don't have language, we're going to try to give you some of that language today. But it's coming from staff meetings that we've been in. And, everybody loves that weekly staff meeting. Getting together with your staff and just hashing some things out and working some things through. Some of it comes from the hallway conversations that we have with people. One of the best ways to walk through your church, I think you shared this with me, Pastor Alan Warnicki told you this, right? Is to just walk slowly. I don't know about you, but on a Sunday morning, I've got things to do and places to be and things to make sure it happens so our gatherings go off well. And sometimes I'm just kind of on my mission because I'm a task kind of guy. I think about that. But if we slow down and realize that every person we come into contact with on Sunday, they want to have a connection with us. And so it's important that we have those hallway conversations. We've all had seasons where things have felt very clear to us and we have a good plan. We know where we're going, but we've also had those seasons where they're very unclear and we're uncertain. And we need to find out, get a grasp on where we're going so that we have a good season ahead. And honestly, there's a weight that comes with ministry. It's something I wasn't quite prepared for. I came into the ministry a little bit later as a pastor. I had a background of construction for 29 years, and God called me into the ministry when I was later in life. And so I've been on staff for over 10 years, but one of the biggest shocks I had was that there's this weight that you carry. And often that is a weight that you want to lead well, but you're not sure about it. Because you're up front. You're up front in front of people, and they're looking at you and watching you. If you've ever wrestled where you fit, or you felt that tension between what you're seeing and what's being said, or you struggle to take that vision and turn it into a reality, then this session is going to be for you. And we had you in mind, and we're so grateful that you're here this morning. So to help us put into words some of these internal questions, we're going to build healthier communication rhythms and give you a few practical ways to navigate that space between the expectation and reality this morning. So with that in mind, let's just open in prayer. Can I just pray for us? Father God, we're so grateful this morning that you have given us this opportunity to speak truth and life to each other. Lord, I would pray that you would bless each lead pastor, each staff person that serves in their church, each lay minister who helps fortify their team. God, would you open up communication channels that are stuck? Would you help us bring clarity to the vision and the purpose that we have? Would you align us and put us in sync with you and what we have today? In your name, amen.
Amen. All right, well, we want to kick off. How do we stay in sync? How do we lead our pastor by staying aligned and engaged? And the first thought we have for you and what we're going to dive into is you just need to get in sync. You just need to get in sync. So what does that look like? Amos 3 gives us a passage about leadership privilege and the responsibility that comes with leadership. And what that also says to us, if we are in a position of leadership, there is a accountability that we have. Everyone is accountable to someone, right? And you may be accountable to your board. You may be accountable to your pastor, a leadership team that you're a part of. And there's always a level of accountability, and we need to get in sync. Amos 3 says, can two people walk together without agreeing on the direction? And again, this passage here is speaking of this privilege that brings responsibility, but it also speaks to accountability. So one of the things I want to talk about is before we get momentum in leadership and in the ministry that you lead, you have to be in sync. So I want you right now where you're at. We're going to go to the gym today. And I don't know what you do when you go to the gym. I go to the gym. I normally have a plan. Recently, I started swimming. Now, that's not something I've ever done in my life out of choice. My mom and dad put me in swim lessons when I was a kid, but swimming is not like one of those, oh, I should go swimming. So I went, because it's like when you want to start running, you'll get shoes. So I'm going to start swimming. I went and got goggles and like a swim cap. And so lately, as I go into the gym, I'm either going there for two reasons, to play basketball or to swim. But today, you're going to the gym, and you're in it right now. This is actually an old gym, if you didn't know that. There used to be mirrors all over the walls here, and you would see yourself work out. I'm going to watch you work out, and you're going to the rowing machine. All right? All right, you're going to the rowing machine. So I want you to get in rowing position, everybody. This is an all play. And I want you to start rowing. Yeah, keep going. We can be this for a few minutes. For some of you, if you need air, just raise your hand. We'll bring a CPR team over to you. All right. So this is fascinating because all of you are rowing right now. You're still rowing. Some of you are sitting next to people and you are already in sync rowing with them. But from where I'm standing, a lot of you are not in sync with even the person next to you. It's like watching you clap in church, right? It's like, where are we? Are we on 1 and 3 or 2 and 4? Like, I just keep 1, 2, 3, 4. So when you are in sync, you're going to go farther. And the purpose of being in sync, it brings great momentum. And just that little exercise shows us it's very hard sometimes to even get in sync with the people right next to us, whether that's your team member, a board member, whatever it may be. And so the first thing that we want to talk about is how do we get in sync? I've worked for 4 lead pastors, and I've had great relationships with all of them. 2 of them I would consider very close to. One of them would be Pastor Kevin, who's actually in the room right now, partly because I'm in close proximity to him. I've worked with him for the last 13 years. And we have a lot of, again, we're in meetings together. I'm on his team right now, so that would be natural. The other person that was a lead pastor of mine that I have great relationship with, I still talk to once a week. Every Sunday night at 6:30, we FaceTime. It was my dad. I mean, he's still my dad, but my dad was my lead pastor he was my lead pastor for 20 years, and I was on staff with him for 10 of those 20. And the other 2 pastors, great guys, still leading in different capacities. If I called them on the phone, they would pick up because we have that relationship. But every pastor I've worked with, I've had a different chemistry with, right? I had different lines of communication with them. And one of the things that I think is important is that we are clear with what our expectations are, whether that is them telling you what those expectations are, or what we are being called to do, and that is to lead areas of ministry that we find ourselves in. And this is what I would tell you. Clarity beats chemistry. And I'll tell you why clarity beats chemistry. Because chemistry is about feeling. There's been seasons of ministry that have been super fun because I feel like I'm really engaged with the team I'm either leading or the team that I'm on. We're doing life together. It's been fun. And then there's been seasons where I've been on teams where I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, I don't even know if I like the people I'm working with, right? Not in my current context, of course, because most of them are in the room. But clarity beats chemistry. Chemistry is a feeling. Clarity is about function. If you have clarity, you know what the mission is. You know what the goals are. You know what direction the team is moving down the field, right? Here's the deal. You might like your pastor, sure, right? They're the one that invited you to the team. Maybe they inherited you on the team. But with chemistry, it's about winning. The winningest teams have great chemistry. But you know what they also have? They have clarity. They know where they're going, why they're going there, and how to get there. And clarity means this. You know what success is. You know what a win looks like. So if someone asks you in a context of, hey, share a win that's going on in your church, what does a win look like for you in the context that you're in? Is it that you had someone give their life to Jesus, or you had someone get healed, or it could be a variety of things. And again, different contexts have different wins. And that's what this idea of clarity is. You know what a win looks like. You also understand in clarity how your leader thinks. Is your leader a slow processor or a fast processor? Most people don't like change. I have been in an environment for the last 13 years where we change things in one meeting and they're executed the next week. And that's not a bad thing, because we've talked in our context, do you like to have the Band-Aid ripped off very slowly, where it's painful and it hurts a little bit? I mean, I got arm hair there. That's not fun. Or do you like it just ripped off real quick and the change happens? Now, we've been in settings where both those things happen, but we understand who we're dealing with and what we're doing. There's a season where we were changing gathering times on our Sunday morning for our services just because we needed people to switch out of some of the services they were in so we'd free up more space. We're like, let's just do it because we need the 10 o'clockers to go to either 9 or 11. We can't have them in the 10 slot, right? So we find this clarity. You have to be aware of the communication style. Is your leader big picture or small picture? Are they direct or are they relational? Here's the deal. You shouldn't have to guess what they are. That's where clarity comes in. That's where communication comes in. Get to know who your pastor or your leader is. Chemistry makes work enjoyable. Clarity makes it effective. All right? So I think that's important to know. Know how your pastor thinks, the decision filters, and set your pastor or your leader or your team or your board, set them up for success. Don't let them be playing from behind, trying to figure out what you're thinking, how you're thinking, why you're doing what you're doing. Be clear, and that clarity brings the chemistry that you want.
So once you're in sync, the next question is what does that actually look like, and how do we show up every day? How do we come prepared, not just ready to take things on the fly, but that we become fully aligned and fully engaged in what we're doing? And so our next point is really that staying fully engaged is so important. And it's built off of Colossians 3:23 that says, work willingly at whatever you do as though you were working for the Lord rather than for people. How many of us ever showed up on Sunday morning, we're tired, we're cranky, we're not sure that we should be there because our attitude stinks? You know, and yet we have a responsibility to play. This verse just has really encouraged me over time as it really talks about I'm working for the Lord. And so the Lord gave everything for me. I need to give him my best. And it doesn't matter how I feel or what life looks like in the moment. I need to come out and be the best I can for him. Because before impact happens, I need to be engaged and I need to be intentional about it. If I am not intentional in what God is asking me to do, then I'm going to fall short every single time. Because I'm only in it for just the fun parts, right? And this is more than just doing our job. It's about showing up with our heart. And our heart is what we've been called with. God reached every single one of us at some point and called us into the ministry through our heart. And bringing our heart to the table is truly fulfilling our calling. This really plays out in 3 ways as you engage. The first is caring about what your pastor cares about. If we are a staff person, whether we're an associate pastor, we're serving in a secondary role, or whether we're a children's pastor or our children's pastor or student pastor, whatever role we play, we all need to keep in mind that we need to help our lead pastor do whatever he thinks is right, because what he cares about is important. And when their priorities become your priorities, then we stop managing tasks and we start moving forward with the mission. We're not on 2 divergent paths, we're on the same path. We need to make sure that we don't drift. And what I mean by that is that engaged leaders bring solutions, not just information. Because when we start drifting, then we get off mission and we get off topic, we get off task. And so we need to bring solutions to the table. Pastor Chris at New Life has often told me, don't just tell me about a problem, bring me a solution. I need to know what you're thinking. You're a very big part of our team. And so that encouragement has always led to me thinking about, okay, this is the issue. This is what's come up. How can we solve this problem together? And I always seek his wisdom on it and make sure that we are on the same page. Because when things are unsaid or unspoken, when there's expectations that are unmet, then frustration happens. And we can not necessarily show it on the outside, but we become just really inwardly bitter maybe, or we can become just angst. There's an anxiousness that we have. And so a big part of staying engaged is learning to make sure that we talk things out and have good communication. That is very key to pretty much everything we're talking about today, about being in sync and engaged and in alignment. The next thing is to learn to anticipate what's coming next. My job as the executive pastor at New Life Church is to see the big picture. Pastor Chris has laid that big picture out. He's the visionary. He carries that part of it. As the task guy, as the detail guy in our church, I have to begin to look at things and see, okay, this is how this piece is going to fit together. This is how this process is going to work. This is what's going to happen to help people move along in their journey towards Christ. But how do we make that real, and how do we make it function well? So I have to anticipate that. A great associate pastor reduces the lead pastor's mental load. We take that off their plate, and we're thinking about that next season all the time. I was a builder for 29 years, and I started projects from the ground up, a place of dirt. Yes, I had a set of plans, but my job as the general contractor was to look at that project in a 3D version of it. Or you might think about playing 3D chess. There's so many things happening on different levels, right? And you have to know what's foundational. You have to know what the next building part is. You have to know when the trades come in. You have to know how things get put together, because one thing follows the other. And if it's not done right by the time you get to the finished work, and some things are out of plumb or out of square, it just isn't going to come together right. It's going to look horrible. Now, nobody's built a perfect house and nobody's built a perfect church. But a good contractor and a good pastor know how to hide the mistakes. And we work on that. We work on it a lot. So we have to be thinking and anticipating and how to fill in those gaps before they become problems. And then we need to bring clarity where things feel unclear. We can speak. We all are given a voice. God gave us a voice to speak it out. Some of us, though, keep that voice very quiet. And we need to be in love sharing what God is telling us. We're going to talk about that more in just a minute. So we're not waiting to also be asked. When we see a need, we step in and we handle it. Don't go to the pastor and say, hey, did you know about this need? You need to fix it. If it's something that is within your purview and you're able to handle it, even your lay people should be trained this. If they can solve a problem before it gets to the pastor or the leadership, all the better. Hey, somebody spilled water over there. It needs to be cleaned up. How simple is it to go and get a paper towel and wipe up that water, or a mop if it's a big problem? It's not a problem until we make it a problem. And so by anticipating what that is and then solving those problems, we can overcome them. And the last thing in this section I want to make sure is we stay rooted in our calling and not our position. It's so important to remember that why God called us into the ministry in the first place. He gave us a plan and a purpose, and he put it deep in our heart. Yes, we want to learn from our lead pastor and other pastors in our area. We want to learn from one another. And as Pastor Vader said earlier, many of us grow up in small churches, and God uses those as testing grounds, as proving grounds for us to learn and to grow. So every opportunity that we have, doesn't matter what size church we're in, we have those opportunities. But that call to our ministry must never leave the forefront of our mind. Why did God call us into this? It's easy to compare if we start looking around. It's easy to start wondering about what's it like on the other side. Somebody once told me the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence until you get there. And that's so true. So let's stop comparing. Let's stay rooted in our calling. Let's be faithful to what's in front of us. Let's celebrate the wins as they come along. And they don't have to be big wins to celebrate. They can be the smallest little things that happen in our lives. And then also we want to finish strong. Because when we finish strong, it builds trust. Trust for us, trust for our pastor, trust for our congregation. When they see us doing things and modeling them out, it builds trust. And so let me just leave you with this morning. This is something that you can measure by, right? So if we bring a solution for every problem to the pastor, that's going to solve a lot of things right out of the gate. If we take time and think about the next season as we're planning ahead and we review that, we stay up on it and not just think things are going to be willy-nilly coming down the road, they'll just be as they are, but we plan them, we review them, and we're staying ahead of it. And then that we address any tension that comes our way. Take care of it. Don't take it to the pastor if you're able to, but take care of that tension right away. So engagement isn't just about how we show up, but alignment is how you stay connected. Let's talk about what it looks like to choose that every single day.
One of the things I think is important for us is that we build our influence through trust. I want you to think about the people that you have that are in your life that are influential today and why you trust them. Right? They're influential in your life because you do trust them. Some of them, you gained their trust. That's how they became influential. 1 Timothy 4:12 says, "Don't let anyone look down on you because you're young, but set an example for the believers in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity." So I found that trust is a real currency of leadership. I was in a meeting recently, and I was just going back to something I said previously about being in sync with my pastor, and I just reminded him, if he asks me to do something, he doesn't have to worry about me not doing it. He trusts me. And he said to me, "No, when I sent that to you, I figured you'd take care of it." So I've built trust in that relationship over time. And over time, trust brings influence to us. And that is why he's asking me to follow up with some of the things I'm following up with. And as we look at this, we have found in our lives, the people that we trust, they bring character, competence, and commitment, right? The people that I've worked with in the last 29 years, I tell people this all the time. I can tell you who the hardest workers are. I can tell you the team members that I've had that I trust the most. I can tell you the ones that have had the most influence in my life as a leader because they had character, they had commitment, they had competence. And if any one of those leaks or we miss on any of those, credibility is taken away. Because all of us in this room can think of someone who lost credibility in our life for a variety of different reasons, right? And I think back to something as I was growing up. My dad would have to take me to practice, a friend's house, drop me off for something, and every time I got out of the car, he would look at me and he would ask me one question, and it was almost a statement. Remember who you represent. That was like literally ingrained in my brain because I was asked that question numerous times. And there was a couple of answers that I knew and I learned over time what he was saying. The first is this: I represent Jesus. So if you're walking into a game, keep it cool. Remember like who you represent. The other thing that he was telling me is, you represent the Wilson name. You represent me. So don't screw up and make me look bad. And there was a season in my life where my mom's maiden name is Price, and I would look at him and I'm like, I represent the Prices too. And he's like, that's right, you do. You know, they were evangelists, and my grandparents on the Wilson side were pastors too. So, I mean, I had a lot to, I couldn't screw things up because I was a PK, and I tried to do my best of screwing things up. But what I found here is what he was saying is, I trust you. You're my kid. So don't go there. Just remember who you represent. You represent our family, and then you represent Jesus. And here's the craziest part. I knew I was getting old when I started asking and telling my kids the same thing. I was like, oh, no, I've just turned into my father. I was like, no. I was like, remember who you represent, son. But here's the deal. It's important because when we look at trust, the American people have lost trust in leadership across the board. across the board. Matter of fact, Gallup tells us that in the 1970s, people trusted clergy at a rate of 65%. Today, that number is 25%. So in 50 years, that trust, that leadership, and especially in ministry, has dropped 40%. The trust is built through consistency. It's built through communication, and it's built through clarity, the things that we've just talked about. And this is why communication matters, because what you assume will always show up in how you lead. And what I want to dive into that for a second. Communication, if it stays unspoken, it can create confusion. If you are a silent processor with your team, they are playing, I'm wondering what they're thinking the entire time, right? Communication matters, and we need to get clear. We need to get aligned with what we're communicating, and that builds trust. We say something on our team all the time, and it's this: communicate that which you assume. Right? Communicate that which you assume. And this is massive for alignment. This is how we stay in sync. Most tension comes when a pastor, it comes from unspoken assumptions. Excellent leaders, they close that gap. So for example, Pastor Kevin, my pastor, he knows certain things that I communicate to him. Do I expect him to remember everything? No. But I'm communicating. Like, did he know that I was going to be on this stage today? Yes. When did he learn I was going to be on this stage? Within a week of when I was asked if I would be able to stand up here and present. And I said, absolutely. I let him know. All right, communicating little things. I have a channel that I communicate with Pastor Kevin, my pastor, my leader, and a group of other staff members. And I'm just letting them know of things I hear in the church that they should probably be aware of, that they don't have to fix. It should just be on their radar. One of them recently was one of our former board members, a lady in our church, one of the sweetest ladies. Matter of fact, when my wife Janelle and I came, she prayed for us and our family. She's faithful every Sunday. And a week ago, I didn't see her, and I asked her husband, like, hey, where's Lorraine? And he's like, Lorraine's in bad shape. She's going to have surgery. Well, this Sunday, I saw her at church, and I walked right up to her, and she's like, yep, I'm going to have a surgery. Now, I don't assume that Pastor Kevin knows that, even though she's one of the former board members at our church. But I communicated to him, hey, just so you know, on this date, this is when she's having surgery. And this is where he trusts me. He trusts that, I'll probably remind him of it, and I'll make sure that Lorraine is well taken care of when she's in the hospital. Now, he'll probably go up and visit her, too, because of relationship, but we're going to make sure Lorraine's taken care of. That is a line of communication where I'm assuming that Kevin knows this, but I'm communicating that which we assume, right? And so this is big. When we're communicating with our leaders, they don't have to second guess what's going on. Now, I'm going to tell you a story with my pastor in the room. There is something that you do not want to happen when you are on our staff. We have something over the years that we have called the Eye of Sauron. The Eye of Sauron can also be known as Kevin's eye, zone focused on your ministry for the wrong reasons, right? And we always joke, we're like, we don't want the Eye of Sauron on our ministry, so what are we going to do? We're going to communicate upward all the things they need to know. And the joke has been when the Eye of Sauron lands on your ministry, and sometimes, and we have fun with it, for those who don't know, it's a Lord of the Rings term, so read a book or watch a movie. But this Eye of Sauron can just like lock in, and we do a deep dive into the ministry. Oh, why are we growing everywhere except for here? Or why are we hearing things over here that we're not hearing anywhere else? Why do we not see leadership doing things here that we're expecting them to do? And this is what I have found on our team, and as a team member and as a team leader of other people on the team, if we communicate with what's going on and why things are happening, the Eye of Sauron might not be on us very long, and it's just going to keep moving. Because Our pastor knows what's going on in our ministry and why it's going on. And I'll give you an example of this. About a year ago, the Eye of Sauron fell on children's ministries, and it just stayed there. And I was like, hey, let's just take a look at what's going on over in children's ministries. And it was fascinating because we were growing everywhere else except for this ministry. And one of our 3 focuses at Canvas Church is kids ministry. We're doing things to bring kids in because we know if the kids come in, guess who else is coming in with them? Mom and dad and grandma and grandpa sometimes, right? And so the Eye of Sauron stayed there for a short time. And we got some clarity. We got some communication. And it went both ways. It was like, hey, we're going to do this, and then we'll start tomorrow or today. And what happened is this week, we were looking backwards, and we're now looking at where we are, and we're like, oh, my word. Like everything is moving up and to the right as we had hoped it would. And that came through some clarity, conversations, and it also came from communication of, hey, this is where we're at. There are some things that we needed to do. We needed some creative people on the team. We put the right people on the bus and in the right seats, and they started moving in that direction. So that's a way that we build trust, is communicating upward. Because most of us in this room, you don't want your board like zone focus on all the things you're doing wrong. Some of you in this room, you don't want your pastor zone focus on all the things that you're doing wrong. Some of you don't want your spouse looking at you, wondering all the things that are going wrong, right? Mine's in the back of the room looking at me right now. But this is how we build trust. You represent your pastor and your leaders well when they're not in the room. So if you speak with alignment, you protect the vision, you don't undercut their leadership, inside conversations, you build massive trust. Most leaders are wondering, no matter what position you hold, I wonder what's going on when I'm not here. And if you build that trust, they don't have to worry about what's going on, right? Do they not have flaws? Yeah, we all have flaws. And we're going to catch those flaws. We're going to learn from those flaws. But this is what I learned working for 4 different pastors. Each one was uniquely gifted. Each one was very different. And I had to lead from a different standpoint from every position that I was in with those different pastors. But I still respect all of them today. So downward leadership is about authority. Upward leadership is about trust. And we want to build trust with the leaders that we are following. We want to offer trust for those that we are leading. And if you can build trust with your pastor, the more influence you'll actually have. Because they'll start inviting your voice to the bigger spaces. They'll bring you into a board meeting to share what's going on in your ministry. And you'll have more influence in that way. So upward influence, it's not about managing your pastor. It's about earning their trust through alignment, clarity, consistency, and that communication we've talked about. And what kind of influence isn't built once, or I should say, and influence is not built once. It's built over a period of time, right? It's a daily decision to stay aligned and communicate upward and through clarity with your pastor.
And that's the thing. Trust is something that we have to work on, and it doesn't come naturally. We have to build on it. But we also need to choose alignment daily. I love what Philippians says. It says, be of one mind and one purpose. And this is so important that we have the same focus going on. So let's talk about alignment, because this is something you choose every single day. Now, that's not to say that we can't disagree, but we have these conversations that if we're not on one mind, of the same mind, then we begin to drift off. We begin to move away from that. And alignment happens when we are relationally connected. I love the story that Pastor Vader's talked about, his associate pastor coming in and talked to him, thinking about, hey, I think God's calling me to pastor a church. Oh, by the way, it's your church, right? Remember that conversation? But that conversation probably wouldn't happen if they weren't relationally connected. And so there's a big problem that's going on in churches today. Many of us have approached ministry, even discipleship, where we're thinking with the left side of our brain. You think about it. This is our decision-making side. This is where we come up with solutions and all that we're doing. But the right side of our brain, the way God designed us, is to be relational. And so we're approaching ministry with just the left side of our brain. But if we want to be relationally connected, we really have to engage that right side. And we need to turn on our relational connections with each other. And even when we turn on our relational connections, it goes further than that, because if our relational connection is on, we can still be out of alignment. We can still be out of tune with the pastor. Have you ever had that conversation with somebody that you know they're just looking right past you and they're still talking? They're not aligned with you. That happens in our marriages. It happens with our kids. It happens in ministry. But when we come into alignment with one another, then we can make things happen a lot quicker and a lot faster. So we need to check our RCs. Misalignment doesn't actually just blow up. It happens over time. So it can get worse if we don't address it. And we need to close those gaps quickly. Instead of assuming something's happening, we need to make sure there's clarity in it and make sure that we're understanding. Communication is two ways. It is actively listening and repeating back what you think you heard and making sure that we understand what's being asked of us. We also need to learn how to have those hard, healthy conversations. Sometimes we avoid them because we don't want conflict. But when we don't have those healthy conversations, then things happen to get pushed down and they get a rug thrown over them. Unspoken expectations will kill momentum so quickly if we don't talk about them and make sure that we're all on the same page. So we need to stay relationally and strategically connected with one another, because alignment doesn't just all break at once. It erodes quietly. There's a simple phrase that says clarity before you amplify. We are all voices of what the mission is, all voices of what the vision is. And when we're standing out there and we're speaking that out, if we're not clear about it, then we shouldn't be amplifying it, because we could be giving the wrong message. We need to make sure that we understand what the vision and mission are before we run with it. And then once we do understand it, and once we do begin to amplify it and communicate it out, it's our job to come alongside and help protect it. It isn't just the lead pastor's job to protect vision. It's also our job to protect that vision. And I've run into many associate pastors over time who really struggle with this next one, and that is finding their vision inside the lead pastor's vision. Wait a minute. God called me to be a pastor too. Yes, and I got hired to be the student pastor, and I've got all these big plans for this ministry. But if they don't fall within the vision of the lead pastor, you're going to have two different visions opposed to one another and working differently. You can end up with a silo of ministry happening over here and another ministry happening here. And it's so important that you bring those two together, that as an associate, you find your vision within the vision of the lead pastor. Healthy following doesn't mean hesitation. It just means that, and it doesn't mean that we need constant permission either. We have gifts, we have abilities, we have opportunities that are before us. And if it's within the lanes that have been designated for us, then we should be able to move forward in that in boldness and confidence. But if it ever becomes a question as to where we're supposed to be leading people, then we need to clarify it with the lead pastor. It doesn't mean that we lead with hesitation, but it means that we take with initiative and we make decisions that allow us to operate in our lane. And the other really important piece about this is it sounds like we're trying to do all the work ourselves, but we need to empower other people. I love what Pastor Vader said this morning as well about taking a group of people and discipling them to do what God's asking them to do. Not just delegating it, but making sure they understand it. And when we come alongside people and empower them to do it, then we can help build the confidence in them to go out and do it. But you can't do that if we're unclear. So we need to ask questions, we need to listen closely, and we need to translate that vision into action. And then we need to advocate for it, especially when the pastor isn't in the room. My lead pastor isn't here today, but I know that my purpose is to support and protect the vision that he has for our church and for our people. And that's what I'll do. I'll stand up every day and do that. And then we need to advocate to the people, or be that voice to the people. Does that mean I agree with him all the time? No. But when I disagree with him, I'll have that conversation in private, never in public. Always in private. I want to honor him in public. God has elevated him to that status and that position, and I need to honor him in public. So we're not just agreeing, we're amplifying. Agreeing says, I'm on board. Amplifying says, I'm helping this move forward. That's the shift from being someone who supports the vision to someone who actually multiplies it. We need to multiply the vision of our local ministry and what's happening. And that just doesn't mean inside the church walls either. That means when we're out at the coffee shop and having a cup of coffee with somebody, they're not overhearing a conversation about, hey, did you hear what happened at church on Sunday? Or it means when we're in the grocery store line and we're talking to the cashier and somebody comes up and taps us on the shoulder. You're that pastor. Do you know about this problem over here? It's my job to turn and say, wait a minute, let's have this conversation later. We need to protect that about our pastor. And because alignment isn't just about being right, it's that unity that we put on. We're unified in our actions and the way we live. And we live that way constantly. And when we do that, then our influence will continue to grow. So I always try to restate the vision in my own words every month so that make sure that I'm in alignment with the lead pastors. And I make weekly decisions within my role so that I'm not waiting for approval, but I'm able to move the mission forward as long as I know what the parameters are in my role. So once you're aligned, the question becomes, how do you carry that forward? How do you lead effectively?
If everybody will, right here, I want you to take a moment and I want you to readjust the way you're sitting, and I want you to now sit with correct posture. The next thought is we want, as it relates to leading, we need to lead with the right posture, all right? And what does that look like? Scripture tells us in Mark 10:45, for even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve others and to give his life as a ransom for many. All right? That's the posture of which we should follow. We should be following the Son of Man in the posture in which he led. And we see this from a way that we position ourselves to lead, and that is to be a servant leader. And I don't know about you, as a teenager, I had a way I walked, right? And it wasn't with good posture. It was like, right? Like my wife, we grew up in the same youth ministry, and I was older than her. And, you know, if you asked her, she's like, oh, he thought he was so cool. He just walked around the church, like, you know, whatever. But no, I had to walk. And it was like, and do you know how I walked wrong? I knew it because my mom would always tell me, throw those shoulders up, Phil. You know, it was like, all right. I don't know if you noticed it, but when I was sitting here while Jay was talking a few minutes ago, I realized I was slouching. And in the moment while he was talking, I was like, because I heard my mom. I'm 50 years old, and I heard my mom in my voice like, stand up straight, Phil. But here's the deal. We need to walk with the same posture that we've been called, and we need to step into the posture of what we're called. Craig Groeschel has a great illustration, and when Craig Groeschel speaks, no matter what size crowd he's speaking in front of, he talks about he steps into the moment when he steps right behind the pulpit or the table he's preaching from. He steps into it, and it's almost like he goes from that moment and it's a step into the moment. Right? And it's a fascinating look. And I think when we step into and have the correct posture as a servant leader, we see things and we do things the way they're supposed to be done. If you are in your church or in a place and you see trash on the floor and you walk right by it, you are not leading from a position of leadership. I mean, that was ingrained in me as like a 10-year-old kid. Like, if you see a piece of trash in church, you should pick it up. We shouldn't have the thought of like, oh, that's someone else's job. And for some of you, that is your job as well, right? But hey, it's one of those things. If there is a question that you could ask to put yourself in a right posture all the time, this is it. And it's gold in your marriage as well as in your ministry. How can I help? How can I help? How can I help? When I do marriage counseling, I'm like, that's one of the questions you should ask all the time. How can I help? Because you step into this posture of, I'm available. How do you need me to serve in this moment? And here's the deal. Nobody in our church is called to our ministry. This idea of our ministry. It's the mission of Jesus. They're just jumping on to help. And we're just, maybe some of us are jumping on to lead. But all of us come from this position of servant leadership. And when we believe that, and we believe that we can serve from a position of leadership, we can stop asking permission to protect our thing, right? Nobody in our church is called to our ministry. They're called to the mission of Jesus. And if we're all on the mission of Jesus, we can start taking ownership of this mission together. And I think one thing we need to do, if you report to somebody, and all of us in this room do, that's accountability. I think one of the things that we need to do, and I find this often with especially pastors that are new or newer to ministry, they're seeking approval for everything they do. Hey, what if we did this? What if we did this? What if we did this? There's conversations that you should have where you are seeking approval and you're talking as a team about the things and the dreams and the visions you might have. But we need to take ownership of what we've been asked to lead, right? And when we can move from approval seeking to ownership thinking, it's going to be a blessing to those that are leading you. Think of it as for some of those that are in a parent role or have been parents with kids in the house that are literally asking all the time for something, right? That can get annoying. Can I please? Can I have one? Can I have one? Can I have one? Can I have one? Can I? After a time, you're like, can you just go get one? Don't ask me again, right? But I think as it talks about being in alignment and leadership, pastors need people that are more willing to take responsibility and ownership than permission askers. Now, here's the deal. You don't have to ask permission if you're communicating with your leader. You're like letting them know, this is the vision. This is where we're going. We'd love for you to jump on board. Our pastors need us to think, to carry, to dream, and to move. And so what happens here is when we are in the right leadership posture, it's one of those things where we are ready to lead. We're stepping into the moment God has gifted us, called us to, and we are leading. And people will follow us, and if you turn around and no one's following you, then maybe that's another conversation. But here's the deal. We can lead with the right posture. It can look great on the outside, but if we are crumbling on the inside, we're not going to move very far because we have to stay healthy. And this brings us to our last point.
And it's so true that all of these other 5 things are really important. But without this last one, none of that's going to matter. Because so many people are serving in ministry in an unhealthy way, either emotionally, mentally, physically, or spiritually. There's something draining and something happening across our churches that is very concerning to us. And both Phil and I were talking about putting this breakout together. We said we have to include this point on being healthy because we cannot serve from a place of emptiness. You can't lead well if you're not healthy. A lot of us are carrying more than people realize. They don't understand the weight that you're carrying. They don't see what's happening outside of the gathering that they see you at. And you are carrying something that is so heavy and so full of weight at times. And if we're not careful, we will lead out of depletion instead of our calling. And eventually what's going on inside of us will come out. It'll start coming out in different ways. We'll forget something that we should have done or a conversation that we should have had. If I could just be very transparent with you for a moment, I had this happen to me just this week. I think God was teaching me a lesson. One of my neighbors, that lives in our neighborhood loves to walk their dogs without a leash. And they let their dogs just run everywhere. And I've had conversations with her because they come up into our yard and they start snapping at some people sometimes, or they'll start licking them, and nobody's inviting them to do that, right? Or they'll leave their business in our yard, right? And it just is frustrating. I had this conversation with her about 3 or 4 times. And this last week, something snapped. I was out doing some spring yard work. Her dogs came running up and came up behind me and got me in the back of the leg. And I turned around and I yelled at that dog, and then I saw her in the street walking the dog. And I said, can't you just keep him on a leash? But it just came out all wrong. It came out really wrong. And I had to go back and I had to apologize for it. Because I was at a place where I was just so frustrated with that. And I was not coming out of my calling. I wasn't speaking love to her. I was speaking in harsh terms to her. And so eventually that frustration that was building up inside me came out. And I had to go back and I had to correct that. So we need to guard our heart. We need to pay attention to what's building up, whether it's stress or frustration, whether we think we're comparing things with other people and seeing, oh, look at that ministry over there. I wish I could be over there. I don't really like my ministry. I want to be over there. I wonder if I should go talk to them. I wonder if they have any positions open over there. And comparing ourselves. Because when we get over there, we're going to find that there's the same kind of problems. It's not going to change. Or if we take an offense, it's so easy for people to take up an offense. Sometimes it's something that somebody did to us and it's a personal offense. And other times we find ourselves taking up offense on somebody else's behalf. And that's not right either. So we need to guard our heart. And what you don't deal with internally will always show up. Health isn't automatic, it's intentional. And many of us have negated that. We have to be purposeful and intentional about taking care of ourselves. We need to learn to manage our emotions and not ignore them. So if we're doing a self-check, and we're understanding, hey, I need a little bit of help in this area, maybe I can't get past this, I've been bumping up against this wall so many times now, then we need to go outside of ourselves and outside of the other places to get the proper help. Maybe it is your pastor. You can go in and have a conversation with him. But sometimes it takes more than that. It takes you to go to a therapist or accountability. And the one thing that we're going to talk about here is having good relationships that will invest in you, because those are what's going to sustain us. We need to check our relationships with our family. Are they on cue? Are they spot on? Or am I really struggling there? What about my teenage son who isn't making decisions the way I want him to do? Now, my kids are all grown. I've had 5 kids, but I've walked that road. My daughter and I, we butted heads for years because she wasn't listening to what the house rules were. She was making decisions on her own. And God finally impressed upon me, if I break that bond with her, I'll never be able to speak another thing into her life. So I had to go back and I had to have conversations with her. How about your friendships? Not just in the church as a pastor or a staff person, but do you have friendships with people outside the church? Do you have conversations with them in the community? Do you have friends that will speak into your life when things are going good and when they're going bad? And specifically, how about your time with God? Are you soaking up His presence every day? Are you sitting with Him? Are you sharing with Him those things that are burdening your heart and allowing Him to speak back to you? We only stay healthy when we stay connected. And so it's important for us to do regular check-ins because they matter. That we ask good questions and that we don't assume alignment, that we confirm it, that we make sure that we are in alignment with our pastor, with our family, with the Lord. We want to be in alignment with Him. And so we need to be able to have those conversations sometimes where we say the hard thing. My pastor, Pastor Chris, says, if you come and tell me something that is hard, all I ask is that you speak love, that you speak it from a place of love. You're not coming at me out of bitterness. You're not coming at me with harshness. Because if I know that you love me and you want to see God's highest best for me, then I can listen to what you have to say. But if you're coming at me in the wrong way, I'm not going to listen. And I understand that. I feel the same way when people do that to me. If I know that they really love me, then I'm going to listen. because it's always easier to deal with things when they're coming from love. It's easier to repair them and take care of it now rather than later. So a great associate pastor doesn't just support the vision, they see it, they speak clearly and consistently, they strengthen it intentionally, and they help move it forward every single day. And as I was thinking about health, I did reach out to Pastor Dave, and one thing I love about our network is that they see this as a real issue that we should all be concerned about, and they've given us resources. The first is every pastor has the ability to get 6 weeks of coaching. And so if you haven't taken advantage of that, you can go on the network page and fill out the form, or you can contact them directly, and they'll get you connected for that 6 weeks of coaching. Another great resource that our church has taken advantage of over the years with different pastors is Agape Hope. And they have a booth over here, and Steve's right over here. He'd be glad to talk to you afterwards, and I encourage you to go see them. And if you didn't know it, the network will pay for some of that counseling. So I would encourage you to do it. And it isn't for people just in crisis either. This is for people who go on a sabbatical, or maybe they need a checkup, or they just want to make sure they're still in alignment. They're still on course. And so take advantage of those things that are there. The other thing that I mentioned earlier was talking about using both sides of our brain the way God desired us and wired us, and making sure that we approach ministry in a relational way as well as with the left side in that positive thinking mode. And one of the books that really opened up my wife and I, actually our whole church, and a good brother of mine who's passed away now, Jim Strisco, brought this book to the network a while ago, and it's called The Other Half of Church. And so if you're ever interested in understanding how that works together, working as a full-brain person in the body of Christ, this is a great starting point. Another book that has been very helpful to us in our church recently is called Living Fearless by Jamie Winship. And if you believe that you are doing great, this probably might not have that much effect on you. But if you believe or you have questions about your identity and who you are in Christ, this is understanding what good identity is and what unhealthy identity is. Because these are keys to us functioning well in our ministries and going forward. And so this morning we're just going to we're pretty much wrapped up in our time, but we want to have conversation with you and allow for some questions and answer time. So if you have any regarding any of these things, we'd be happy to stand here and take those questions at this time. Yeah.
I'll use that since I'm facing this direction. Several years ago, a book came out called Leading from the Second Chair. Now, my assumption would be that both of you are very comfortable and feel called as associate pastors. I could be wrong in that. But what advice would you give? Because we have a lot of associate pastors, that's not where they want to stay forever. They want to become a lead pastor. So what advice would you give them on leading as in the second chair? And some of this you've covered, but how they can do that effectively as they continue to support the vision of the lead pastor.
Yeah, I think one of the things I found, I was a youth pastor in Portland for 10 years, and I was peers with a lot of youth pastors who thought they could go lead a church better than their current pastor could, and so they tried. They did. They went and planted churches, and that was like 20 years ago. None of those guys are in ministry anymore. Some of them tried to plant the church because this is the way they thought. I can do it better, so I'm going to go do it better. And they didn't bring anybody along with them in the journey. If you're sitting in that second chair right now and you have a desire to go be a lead pastor, what I would hope and I would think and I would encourage you to do is go rub shoulders with lead pastors and start talking to them. Come with questions and just listen, soak it in, and let them speak into your life. Because you might think it's a fun ride, and it might not be the fun ride you thought. For others, you're like, it's going to be a funner ride than funner's a word. It's a funner ride than the one I'm on right now, and it could be. We need more lead pastors in the church, capital C church, right? We had one of our all-stars on our team at Canvas, loved him. Was sitting in a conference and felt God go, you need to go be a lead pastor. They need more lead pastors. And so Pastor Kevin holds every single one of our staff like this. If they want to go, God's calling them to go, I will let them go. And he said, Rob Shader, most of you know him in here, Rob came and said, I think I'm supposed to be a lead pastor. And so he sat with Kevin, and Kevin fed into him, and now Rob's pastoring a church in Central Oregon, and I was just on a mission trip with Rob a month ago, and Rob is crushing it. He's loving it. It's so cool to see what he's doing. But what did Rob do? He let his pastor know. His pastor was not threatened by that and just said, you know what, I'm going to walk with you and set you up for success.
That's good. I'm going to leave it at that because I want to get more questions. Anybody else? Okay. Well, yes, back there. How do you resolve conflict well?
Fight club.
Yeah, right? In the basement. Yeah. That's an interesting question that could go a lot of different ways. But one of the things I've learned over time as a layperson, actually, I served on board in a couple different churches and saw the interaction between different board members. And sometimes pastors will come up to me because I have a privilege, at least in our church, of attending every board meeting. Pastor Chris wants me there. I have no vote. I don't do any of that. I help with the agenda. I actually bring all the supporting documents and everything around every single agenda item. I write the agendas. He tells me what to put in it, but I write them. And I get into a boardroom, and there's been years where we've had people who shouldn't probably have been a board member. It's been unhealthy, and we've had to have conversations around that. But I want to say, before I forget it, that we have very good board meetings right now, and we love them. We can't wait to get together. But we try to engage each other relationally, understanding who each other is personally. We start our board meetings at 5:30, and we start with dinner together, and we pray. And we spend the first hour and a half having dinner and prayer. And then from 7 to 9 at the latest, we quit at 9, we have our board meeting. And it functions so well every single month. And but I've been in board meetings where we've had people who want to get in and they want to nitpick every agenda item. Or they have this idea that they come into that board meeting and they think that they're going to go through every single financial transaction. That's not their role. Their role is to help bring policy to the meeting and to help understand things around the ministry and the mission that we're doing. But those conversations of conflict had to happen not just in that public format, but in the private setting of me going to them or Pastor Chris going to them and or the three of us going together and having those one-on-one. And just building relationship is the biggest thing to overcome that conflict. Trying to see things from their point of view and also hearing from God, what is really happening here, Lord? So
yeah, and I think conflict and tension, often we view it as negative. Conflict and tension can actually propel you forward. And so I think, as Pastor Jay said, if we get an understanding of where the conflict's coming from and working through that with a mediator or somebody that can help us navigate that, there's going to be people that just don't like me. Or like the things that I'm bringing, or like my leadership or whatever, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. I'm secure enough in that. But if there's certain people, I want them to like me. I'm a likable guy. But if there's this tension, let's figure out why.
Okay, probably got time for one more.
Yeah, John Michael. So how the term executive pastor and how the different roles change through seasons is the question. What does that look like? How's that defined?
For me, I was nurtured up into that right out of the gate. As a previous board member, in fact, I tell people now I'm a retired board member, I'm in the ministry. I saw a couple different transitions happen at New Life while we've been there in the last 23 years or so. And I was asked to lead the search committee between Pastor Sean and Pastor Chris now. And that translated into I didn't even understand what was happening. But apparently I did a good job. And Pastor Chris said that, hey, I really like the way you handled that. Would you come on and work with me part-time? Continue to do the administrative work, because without a pastor, we brought in Pastor Ed Vinio, love that man, so miss him, but he helped us through that 9 months of season in that search, and he did the preaching and the teaching, but we recognized there was still a hole administratively, and so I came in and helped serve in that role during that time. Then when Pastor Chris came on, we continued that relationship on, and he said, I think God's hand on you, I think you should go into the ministry. And so I started part-time. I was there for 2 years part-time, and then he hired me full-time in 2016, and I've been there ever since. And he said, the one condition is I really want you to pursue your credentialing. And so I began to do that, and I just kind of grew into that role, and that's how that happened for us. But I don't know how that happens in every single church. I think it depends upon where you're at with that church. I think it also just has an impact upon what the needs of the ministry are and how to best serve the church. I always tell them, Pastor, if you need me to step down so that the church needs to go a different direction, I said I would be willing to do that. Now, maybe it's because I'm closer to retirement age, but I got 5 grandkids I want to go see more, but that's not really what it is about. I feel that the role that he plays with the mantle of leadership that God's placed on him for our leader in our church at this time needs to have the best of the best rise up to the top. And if it's not me, that's okay. So
we really don't have we don't go by titles at Canvas. I've been there 13 years. I've done 13 different things. They're more just so we kind of know who has direction of like campus pastor. We know who those campus pastors are. We know who our lead pastor is. A lot of us have different roles. I always joke, depending on how I'm communicating and who I'm communicating to, depends on how I sign off on the email, the text, whatever. So I could be missions pastor, Phil. It could be community, connect, care pastor. So we kind of just, we don't put a lot of weight into the title. We just kind of know who's on the team and who's doing what, and how do we work together for the better of that. So that's a great question, though. So, and again, I think Jay said it best. I worked on a team where our lead pastor resigned and left, and I watched like 4 people fight for the lead pastor position that was open, and it was just kind of, you sat back in a chair, and it was sad, hilarious, and they were all gone within 6 months when the new guy came. So, and then it was none of them. So I think if you're fighting for that position, that's a conversation you have to have with yourself. And I'm not saying you are, but I think it's like if you're fighting for a certain position on your team, figure out like what that looks like, and maybe it's not on the team you're on, maybe it's somewhere else. So that's all the time we have, and we'll turn it over to Pastor Dave, who's going to dismiss us all to lunch, I bet.
Yeah, you think so? Well, hey, let's thank Phil and Jay for sharing with us today. We appreciate that, guys. Well, have a wonderful lunch. Pray you'll make some connections this afternoon, and we will be gathering back together again at 7 o'clock tonight. So